gallery.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
my gallery. So.
Oh, she was emailing me today already.
Oh, yeah, emailing, absolutely.
And I told Kelly I need to leave her a few minutes early. I had to be back at her house. So. Yep.
Oh. Well. Obviously, she's very dedicated to us.
In this room, huh?
Right. I was just telling them we might not see you because you had 55 boards.
I ran.
Everybody.
Hey, how's it
I'm a little
going?
across the street, so I guess it's down to you one part of me, so.
Okay, thanks for everyone being here. Yvonne, are you on your way walking over or?
Walking to the parking lot. We had a bit of an unexpected issue at the house today, so I'm on the way, but I will be getting in my car.
Okay.
Ask her if she just wants to continue.
It's easier to be in person.
All right.
Alright. So thanks for everyone coming. We have a meeting agenda and we'll do, I guess, a roll call of who's all here, just for the record. I'll go ahead and start that. Ryan Gale. Here. Carly Wright.
Here.
Roger Williams. Here. Alicia Bay.
Here.
Yvonne Putz.
Here.
Online. And then Kathleen Fish.
Here.
And then city staff, Chris Snyder and Kelly. So this is a subcommittee for the Cultural Tourism Promotion Advisory Board. And our task from the last board meeting was for a subcommittee to get together and start looking at reviewing the application questions and criteria and all that good stuff. So where I'd like to start with this today is starting with the grant manual, application manual itself, because that kind of gives the overview and it has each of the questions for each of the applications already met, as well as what changes were made last year. Since you have the colored copies, you can see the red changes on those. And hopefully that'll give you a more holistic view of the process and of each of the application questions. Since we're going to be looking at the criteria, we're looking at direction for how we can improve these questions or the scoring or whatever the case may be. So on this grant manual, you'll see on the first main page the contents, the different requirements. In general, it's all about, section 56 of the city charter and the 4 uses of TOT monies. And then of course having an IRS nonprofit status, unless of course they're applying for a small non-501c grant of $2,000 or less. Reporting application submittals when this will take place in November. And then a disqualification notification, and also the board's right to alter any of the funding amounts requested. So those are kind of the fundamental requirements. And then each application has its own set of requirements, whether it's a capital improvement, a capital asset, it's a facility operating grant, or if it's an event project grant. And then the actual application questions follow those sections. And right now it is capital, facility, and event structured. And then you have the scoring at the end and the middle points. So basically everything that we're going to take a look at and change or potentially change is captured in this manual. So I figured it'd be easier to start with redlining and going over the manual first, and then we can get into what it looks like on the applications, or examples of the applications. So normally I'm contemplating changing this around to have it start with the facility operator grants and the questions for that, and then the requirements for the capital improvements, and then the events last. Just trying to.
That would make sense.
I was wondering.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have no problem with that's a simple change of,
I think it should be, yeah, reflect how it is on the scoring sheet.
so we'll just swap the capital facility. This is on which one of those, just to make that readable easier. That being said, let's take a look at the capital improvement side of things. It's the smallest grant as far as how many applications we received on an annual basis. I think this last year was the most we received, was like 5, I think. In the past, we usually use 2, maybe 3. Last year, the board decided to change their grant request to $20,000. It's still a 50% match. It's based on the actuals, so whatever the actual cost of the capital improvement, they have to get the full 20,000. They have to spend 40,000, basically, and then whatever matching dollars the facility operator uses is up to them, whether it's additional grant fundings from another source, or if it's their own donations, or if it's an endowment fund, or whatever. Those are all liable. The city's in this grant is only going to pay 50% of the actual. Sometimes that's more, sometimes that's less than what they've requested. Any questions on the capital improvement grant?
Yeah, so just giving a sense of the room, are we fine with kind of leaving the 20,000 and our current policies as they are? Do we have any feedback, or is there any discussion?
I really appreciate it increasing to 20,000.
Yeah, I'm thinking that the 20,000 is probably cost of construction recently in the last few years. It's probably helpful.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so a couple of things. So in the grant manual, didn't it say 10,000, but it was 20,000? I believe the manual said 10,000.
I believe it was like that in the past before we changed it to 20,000.
Yeah, in the past it was 10,000.
So the manual did say 20,000 this year?
Yep.
Okay.
I'm sharing the manual with you actually right now.
Okay,
Is it
so
possible
I
there's like a-
can't, because I'm not looking at it while driving, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And then my other question was on it, whether or not, and this isn't ours really to make a recommendation, or is it about the 20,000 or not? Because the one consideration I think we have to give is that this year we weren't able to fund grants fully, and yet we were doing twice as much in cap spending grants, which if that money hadn't been spent, we probably could have fully funded more of the event request. So
yeah, if you hadn't changed it to 20,000 and they were just at the $10,000 level, I think it was 60,000 was the total amount. So that's 3 grants at 20. And if it would have been 30,000 instead, so you would have had 30,000 more to allocate across the event grants, which really would have only been 3 more fully funded grants at 10,000 each. So it's kind of a wash, doesn't make a whole lot of difference, I don't think. The way the scoring came in, the funding dollar amount available, there was still like 13 grants that would not have been funded based on the amount of dollars that were available. And even adding $30,000 more, it would have only added 3 more $10,000 grant levels.
would it have allowed us to fully fund those that now got, what did we end up getting, 70% or 75%?
This last year, the change was at 80%.
Okay.
So everyone got 80% except for those underneath the $3,000 level. And they
So
got,
would it have allowed us to fully fund all of those, or no?
no,
And I'm not against the 20,000. I'm just raising the question for consideration.
Yeah, that'd been like 2,000 times 50%, so that'd be 100,000. We would get 70 extra thousand, so fuller, but
yeah.
Okay.
No, it wouldn't have made a difference.
Okay. Thank you.
Unless, I think we need to clarify where we ask for other social media links, URL, because some people wrote like Facebook, yes. Like, there was like, or it would be like at name here. So they didn't actually get the idea of like, we actually want the links to what those things are, not, yeah, you got it.
And they didn't read the directions, links.
I know.
We could say direct links, but I mean, that's a negligible difference in wording, you know? Yeah.
I hate, this is gonna be where it's gotta be the caveat of like, does everyone know what a URL is? Oh, I don't know. Like,
I would think that, social media links, the word links being used would have
Yeah.
implied putting that in there. So if somebody click on
when
it.
you review it with everyone in October,
You want me to
I'll be
highlight
like, I'll be like, here's Carly's note.
that? Okay,
Just,
I'll double underline links.
yeah, yes, links. I do want to be able to click on them.
Yeah.
Cause like, click like a mad woman through those applications.
Could you put like clickable links?
Hyperlink, you know?
These are all the things. to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. You're right, because links is an act, like links.
I think it's sausage.
I was actually just thinking, next time there's gonna be a little sausage emojis, but you know.
So one thing that I think has been interesting, I really appreciate all the efforts to quantify what things mean. I was just trying to look through. I was asked in person regarding the capital improvement with the diversity, equity, and inclusion components were to that construction piece, which I think is an important question. But I was trying to remember if it had been in the original application. And then also, I don't know that the TOT board has a shared definition.
I don't think we do.
Yeah, I was actually just gonna bring that up, because I think that is confusing in the regards of project, like if you're putting a sign up, how does that relate to diversity, equity, and inclusion?
Well, I'm actually having, okay, wait, does the city of Salem have a diversity, equity, and inclusion policy, whatever? Because obviously it should be something that's across the
Yes.
board, and whatever it is should be, we should all know it. And it should be included, so that that's what it's kind of the standardized.
So we do have a 6-page in here for
What
diversity.
page, what page is it?
Page 10.
So in terms of like, projects, we have sort of a definition of what we mean by diversity and inclusion in place, and that involves, is the content of the event itself related to diversity and inclusion in some way? Like, are you reaching out to people like beyond just kind of your standard demographics, and is your event accessible to diverse populations? Like, do you have free admission? Do you have like, interpreters in Spanish and things like that? So, and when I developed this at the time, that was kind of like what our thinking was, to like clarify more what we meant by, having an event that supported diversity, equity, and inclusion. If we think we need more clarification on that, that's something we could look into.
Well, and your definition fits an event really well.
Yeah.
but I was applying for construction.
Yeah, I mean, I think we need to clarify
Small
that, so.
building, and intended use will be a cafe, so the question was around, how that outreach would look, but is there a more simple, or like if it's going to be a lens that's applied to all 3 applications,
So
is there one that fits more
page
broadly?
12. Page 12, question 2. Like my last question, how was your facility enhancing quality of life?
Okay, thank you.
And then strong evidence.
So one way we could phrase that for projects is the project supporting a facility that fosters diversity, equity, and inclusion?
Or could you even couch it in terms of, are we looking to hire companies owned by a diverse population? It seems like all the big companies in town are not as diverse, but then
Yeah.
you can't create a company to fit a need if one doesn't exist.
Yeah.
I mean, we've started hiring out that way for our vendors, but that's an easier
I
thing to
love
do.
that philosophy, yeah, just like
Practical.
right.
Yeah.
Salem's not.
So I think in general, the board is kind of like looking here's the definition, this is what we're looking for, based off of that, and then use it up to the organizations to determine how they fit within that level. Back to the reading the manual, reading the directions. Provide strong evidence that the facility is accessible to various populations in Salem. Whether that's income levels, non-English languages, disabilities, LGBTQ friendly, et cetera. And that's like, max points on that. That's how the scoring is supposed to go. Strong evidence that marketing efforts are more interesting. So one is your facility, your other is your marketing efforts. And then the third one is more quality of life. That's still yeah. So there are definitions in there, there are directions of what the board has identified the questions of how that should be approached.
Those questions.
But I think it's, not everybody reads the directions again. Pay attention to details, but I would say that they are there. How does the board feel about what's written? Change that, that's fine.
I thought Omar did a good job of being kind of a broken record to check in with each person on how they did on there. And that should help them to understand better what we're looking for in the future, and letting them know that that is getting graded.
Well, no, I'll get even more specific. So I interpreted that as when we're done with this project, there will be wheelchair access to a coffee shop from Water Street. So I interpret that as accessibility. But then there was a question posed about some of the operations of the actual cafe in reaching out to diverse populations. So like,
I can understand why they'd be confused.
right? Yeah. So, So I agree with you. This is as concise as we're going to get. In practice, is there a difference with capital, facility, and events of what the expectation is? That was my question.
I feel like even with the capital improvement project, there's some ability to refer back to your organization in general and what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, that's the first piece. Are you
not
accessible to diverse populations?
Not every project, capital improvement wise, like, facility changes can be DEI. Right. But your organization is in these ways and,
That's kind of what I'm thinking too, just like phrasing it in that way, is like, does your project support, like, in terms of diversity, how does your project support your facility or this overall DEI initiatives, If it just makes your facility more accessible, it just makes it, more sustainable, or it keeps it open and operating so you can carry your mission, I mean, that's, to me, makes sense in terms of, how it ties into DEI. So I'm trying to think of the best way to phrase that, like on the actual questions itself.
From what's being explained and discussed, I really do think this fits that.
Yeah. So. Okay, so this would be a question for the capital asset improvement number 11 on page 4.
you might want to stay for.
I know.
To reorder? Okay.
Just so that you stay in order.
Okay.
So what did you ask, Ryan? What were you?
Yeah, so number 11 is the question where we would make the changes in wording to clarify what we mean by DEI in terms of the actual project itself. So that'd be 11B.
Those are the actual statements.
Oh yeah, I mean, sorry, 11B, I mean, 12. I mean.
11A C are the actual statements of what the goals are, the board's goals. So then,
Yeah, you're right. I mean, number 12 where we actually changed the wording.
describe how TOT funding will be used to make the cultural tourism advisory. So that would be where they would write out how they, depending on which one they select, if they select 1, 2, or 3, or whatever the mix is, then they would then describe that based on that number 11 selections.
I just wonder how many people actually read the manual. Because there's stuff that we say in here that, I mean, if they read it, they'll get A's.
No, and the rubric is really helpful, because I
Yeah.
will always go back.
Yeah,
and
right.
go, Did I answer? what was
Because
asked?
part of it, I feel like, I mean, I think our question's good and it is direct, and without telling people, hey, pay special attention to this section. I don't know.
So maybe what you're asking is there a way to provide more clarity and put a footnote that says, if you have a question about how to answer this question, go to
Or
see
like-
page such and such,
yeah.
manual,
Or linking,
or linking to.
yeah, I really think I'm such a link fan
Because-
too, everywhere you can, you link to where it takes them. It really encourages people to read, they see there's a hyperlink.
I think, yeah, that is it's a question of can we embed that into the application? That would work. I mean,
It's
then,
within, it's.
where you fill out
The
the
problem is it's in the same document.
yeah,
It's just,
yeah.
you're providing a link and the link is a
Still
document
has
that you're linking to.
three people too, at the same time,
I know.
if you're grading your grant, you should, if you have the capacity to carry out one of these projects, you should also have the capacity to write a grant.
Well, and when we have the orientation, I tell, for those that are there for orientations, I tell them, hey,
You do.
refer to the manual. It has a list of all the questions and it has a scoring rubric on how those questions are gonna be reviewed. So you can basically answer any of the questions on the application, knowing ahead of time what they're looking for because it's scoring.
I think it's exceptionally helpful if at least one board member and one facility operator is at each of the orientations. So we do one on the Tuesday night in lieu of the October meeting. So it's second Tuesday, October, and then we do one that Thursday afternoon, like this during the day. And
It's-
usually there has been at least,
Yeah, it's helpful to
One of
have
each
board
there,
members there. as
because
well
you
as
can speak up and
facility
say, hey, my experience in this area is this is really important. Or people get hung up and forget that, both economic impact, quality of life, and, heads of events all matter. They're all, just those things that you've learned that, you look for or I've seen people get hung up on. Those kinds of things as he's going through the grant manual can be emphasized by either someone that's going to be grading them or someone that's has filled them out before, or, some of the cases you've done.
And I know last year I spoke up and talked about people applying who had never applied before, and that it is very approachable. And that they shouldn't be intimidated by it if they read the information.
And you guys are always good about answering questions.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've met them multiple times, hey,
Yeah.
reach out.
That was very difficult. You're like, I think you mean this. And maybe we could do testimonials at the orientation saying, ask them, they'll
Don't be
answer.
afraid to ask,
Yeah.
And if there are areas that it would help to have us kind of prompted, ready to make a point, to reiterate, because sometimes I think it is just somebody different starts talking, people kind of wake up again. You know how it is, people get in their zone, maybe they start looking at other things on their desk. It's one of the curses of Zoom is.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing everyone saying is that it's not so much like what's literally written in the manual, it's more so just the TOT members just being there at the orientation to answer questions and emphasize points of clarification.
I think it's a huge benefit to the audience if that
Yeah.
happens.
So as it stands now for the application questions for the capital asset permit, we want to just, keep the questions about describing how TOT be using to meet the goals, in number 11. like as is, or do we need to have more specific clarification on how to answer the diversity question?
You can ask the person who raised the question.
Well, that's.
I think this is stated.
Yeah.
For me as the applicant, or I was asking how's it interpreted.
Right.
And once it's read, and understood. By both.
Yeah.
Did anyone feel like the tips page needed anything different? Bring that page
I
down.
think the tips page scares people.
Okay.
Because, I mean, it's like the resources are cited, but I think that, I just think people, I think they just get lost in it, although maybe there's just too much information on this page. The link should be moved to the bottom and yeah, just a matter of reorganization.
So, okay, so you would want to take the Harvard University stuff and best practices measures that down
Yeah, like,
underneath the best practices procedures.
yeah, I'd be like, for reference, like for future reference, like tip. Cause I think people look at this and think, oh gosh, I'm gonna have to go read that, or I'm gonna have to go read that, when it's like, really, our tips are like, hey, answer these questions, like, these are the questions, if you answer these, that should help you form your, like, how it does affect, or like how it is inclusive.
So I'm
fixing
thinking
that.
of moving the tips piece up to the top as the first piece, which would pull that up, and then move this stuff underneath it. Right there, underneath it, but like. And then all the way down. Stuff goes to the bottom. All those links and stuff.
Yeah, except for on these tips,
Because these
So-
apply more directly to us.
Yeah, the tips piece was where I tried to elaborate a little bit more on what was being shared. And maybe you determine that that's all you need, just put the links down below.
yeah,
And just cross out that section there.
That's not which
Which
section.
section?
The first number of 1 to 7.
Are the tips more or less reflected in the actual documents themselves?
It's more of, it was more my explanation of what is being looked for.
Yeah.
As a way of kind of putting it, hopefully, a bit more plain position.
Yeah.
As you go through and think about how you answer the questions, about why you want to have this particular aspect of it, and explain that. So it was my way of putting it in layman's terms. Better understanding how to answer the diversity equity. So,
And they are good reminders. I mean, I remember being through them again this year. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so right now we're thinking about just scrapping it, keeping it as, keeping it as.
I mean, I would definitely give them links so that they can,
Tips to the top, links to the bottom.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so basically just swap, is what you're saying.
Well, if maybe when we have things like tips, they should be as far back as possible. It's like additional resources, it's like, and you can, if you didn't read them, it's not gonna make your grant as strong, but they're not the most important thing as far as the general information someone needs to absorb.
Yeah. So just making the section heading clearer.
So move to end of annual.
I just can't believe how much it's improved in the 8 years I've been doing this. I mean, really, it is really something notable how much better this is than the first time I did it. In the manual too, really, you should feel good about that.
Yeah, I mean, this is why we have these kind of meetings, just to make it
It's been a
easier
work in
now.
progress the whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember my first time it was daunting.
Mhm.
And it wasn't that it was bad, it was just overwhelming.
And I'm curious from a staffing point, how does this process compare to other processes that you're familiar with?
To me,
More
it's,
difficult, is it easier, is it? You
I
know,
think it's more approachable would be the term I would use, as far as, some of the other grants you can ask questions to, but some are very much, you have until this time to ask questions, and then like it's kind of closed off after that, and during the writing, unless you're having like a technical issue, they're not as approachable, you have a time to kind of send your questions, and then it's, I find it pretty approachable compared to other grants.
So definitely approachable, transparent.
Very
Say,
transparent.
by law.
Yeah.
Like, knowing where it is, like all these supports and how they're, and I really appreciate the reporting being simplified. That I know has made it so much more straightforward. The next thing that would make it less onerous is the facility operating budget things that we have to fill out with each grant. That was an option. I don't even know if that's an option to reduce some of that, or to even make it so we could give you like a P&L instead of having to change, because we use accrual method. So business manager has to change it to.
And what's difficult there is that not everyone fills out the budget information the same way. And in an attempt, well, at least this is what I got from it last year, because I read, reading through, I was like, okay, everyone should have these certain things, and I was like, but, well, how much is actually spent on marketing? And some are very clear, marketing this, and others are like just nested into other things. And I was like, okay, that doesn't give me the clarity that I want. So that's where I think it's difficult, because, not every organization has the same method of accounting.
Right, so this is really straightforward. This just gets a little. But because I always thought
Because
the
you're trying to
intention
match up.
was, yes.
I can see that aspect of it where this is the facility operator budget, where you're trying to match up what your bank balances were at the beginning of the year and at the end of the year, and report on how much TOT funding you received. So yeah, I can see where that can be.
And there's not another foundation or grantor that I've ever worked with that wants to make sure I.
Balancing the books.
That is totally true.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I do every year go, how am I supposed to do that again? Because some of the things you just, that was over the years been the harder.
It's the worst part.
Yeah.
So what is it that no other organizations require?
That we show
Yeah.
a bank balance
Oh, yeah.
So like,
to compare
we
with
could
what
just-
we're reporting on our financials.
We could just turn in our 990.
That's
How
what
do you
they've
do
done,
that anyway?
that's done in the past, I think it's still.
Because they use.
I know the 990s have been turned in the past.
But like
You
a
just
lot of
do,
other
but you
grants,
just
I'm
turn
just
in
used
the
to
one
grants
from the
saying,
year before.
yeah, provide a 990, and like most recent
And then
email
get rid of-
saying,
and then get rid of
like,
this, or-
monthly.
Because
Or
I
some-
Yeah.
I think the purpose of this was to identify how much TOT money you could receive. And then one can correlate that to your budget, what your actuals are.
But in the end, is that because you'd wanna limit somebody, what our budget is doesn't in the end make a difference on how much we get.
No, it doesn't. I think the reason that came about was just simply to have a way for board members to quickly take a look at how much TOT funding we've received in the past, over the last year or whatever.
So how about we do that instead?
Yeah, so there could just be a report ran that said each organization, here's
Yeah.
what.
Or this could be tweaked to where it just says report on how much TOT money you received and identify it as facility operator versus capital improvement.
I can assure you when it gets into, like, how was your TOT money used? We're just going, salary, paying the lights, because it goes into, I think most of us, it goes into a common
Yeah, it goes
operating
around the
fund.
facility.
Right.
Yeah, so I'm not being like, oh, I could pay 10% of the salaries this month with that. So it's general operating
Right,
fund is
and that's what it is, it's
Yeah.
general operation.
yeah.
But I think-
For the facility.
So I think that actually would be a great way for us to help, for the application, actually help our facility operators so that it less work, or rather simplified work,
Simplified work.
that gives the information that we can actually refer to very easily on like the comparison of that. As someone looking at the grants and grading and reviewing them, I like to know how much facilities are spending on marketing, and, you know, so like, so there's certain little buckets that I like to know, just because it's one of those where it's like, if we're trying to drive TOT dollars in order to be able to give TOT dollars, then yeah, I would like to know that it's being taken serious, and it's like, we're trying to, like, we are doing a marketing thing, and we are spending money on promotions or advertising, and, you know, and I know sometimes some of that is like part of the salary, if you have a marketing person could technically fit in there or whatever, but, so I'm not sure exactly what it looks like, but something like that just helps.
I really like the concept that you as a board member can compare Rocky and Gilbert House, but because it's a very standardized, like, 30%, like, you don't have to do like salary.
Yeah, well, and
I'm just asking that it not be formatted in a way that a business manager
it's
has
scary.
to like do, and I'm fortunate because I
Yeah.
have a business manager.
Yeah.
Some of us don't have business managers, some of us
Yeah.
are everything. So, yeah, simplifying that it doesn't have to be converted to a cash account.
Yeah.
we have the same thing too, we have to beg an accounting firm to help us figure out all of the funky switching cash to accrual.
So
And then-
tell me
and then I
again
just
what
get all
other
the
grants
things
ask
for-
for. Tell me again,
$9.90.
just, what is a 990?
The tax.
So,
form.
That's just a tax form. Yeah, so, and it'll ask for a long form, so, because there's three, you could do three, there's like the long form, where there's like a middle form, I can't remember what it's called, and then there's like the easy, which I don't think any of our facilities can
No.
fill out easies, because
No.
y'all make more, yay for us. But, yeah, so it's basically, I mean, and then it is a standard, because it's like all the IRS documentation.
But that wouldn't show you the things you want, so what is the
No, well,
balance of what
We
we
wanna know
want
how much
and what they
TOT
want?
they've received over the years or whatever, but I do think they all have to fill out a 990.
This
It is
shows,
an easy comparison.
this shows their income, in other words, diversity of
Yeah.
revenues,
Yeah,
the revenue side of things, and then personnel dollars and then expenses, I mean, marketing is one of those on there.
yeah, there was one that filled out interesting. That. Didn't look like I thought it would. The stuff was, yeah, it was interesting. Interesting, yeah, but in my head.
You wanna have an example to look at?
No, I don't, yeah, cause I have to go back and look and be like, okay, wait, did I really read it that way?
I mean, just for me at least, just looking at it from a scoring standpoint, just is the financial information provided allow me to answer the two central questions for the budget? It's like, you know, is the budget balanced and realistic, and does it show a diversified source of funding? Because those are the things we're actually scoring on at the end of the day.
Where are you looking?
That's in the.
On page 16,
Okay.
the actual scoring criteria for the facility grants.
Okay.
That's why this whole
Yes.
manual links back and forth.
And I think, like, that is really important because, fortunately, I think on the capital, budgets are lovely. On the event grants, they are not lovely. So I think it does those three questions, that, like, right there, like, for the 3 points. These documents need to match up with those, so we can easily answer those questions.
Well, and then when you get to the facility grant itself, application, just section on that. It says to provide the revenues and provide the expenditures at a summary level application,
Yes.
which is supposed to tie back to this. So if we do make changes, we have to make sure that we're not, we remember what's all tied into it.
Grant applications if anyone wants to look.
We've got time to dive in and diversify it. What is the, I mean, what, again, this is trying to provide some, on the revenue side, some explanation for the board members to see, do they have diversified revenues?
Right.
And what does that consist of, whether it's ticket sales, whether that's rental income, whether it's memberships, that kind of stuff. I mean, how much do you really need to know? How much do you want to know as a board member?
I appreciate knowing they had diversified, because if suddenly they can't have events, you know, like we saw happen, then they still have other sources of income to support their programming or.
So then the question is for the facility operators, how can we make this simpler and yet still capture what the board members would like to see?
Because you can have simple questions, like we used to, the quarterly and the annual reports, talk about, we used to say that quarterly on our recording is what percentage of your income was TOT funded.
Yeah.
And so it can be something as simple as that, I think, saying what percentage of your money is coming from
Yeah.
that, and that is something that anyone, I think, we wouldn't be, like, you wouldn't have to be getting somebody else to run that for you. That's the
No.
kind of thing anybody can.
Switching the cash accrual, that's the part that I think kills.
Yeah.
Both of our organizations, is making that kind of transition. And then having to upload all the bank statements.
Yeah.
That's,
Yeah.
like, not even a federal grant requires that, the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got an NEA
I
grant.
agree.
I mean, just again, for me, can I answer these two questions that we are actually, trying to measure and score on? And the financial information provided does allow me to do that, then, I'm good. I've seen what I need to see for the purposes of scoring.
So let's make sure, I'm not sure if how do we simplify it, I guess is my question. What change needs to take place?
What are we changing?
What are we changing?
What are my notes gonna say?
My request would be that it doesn't have to match a bank statement
Okay.
at the end of the year, because then we could report according to our accrual.
Can I say I don't want bank statements?
That's fine.
Okay, we don't want bank statements, that's what I say.
Okay, good.
Wait, well, I can't, I mean, I'm only
Okay.
one person who can make this recommendation.
Yeah.
I got other people.
Yeah, I mean, if it doesn't have the answer to these questions, I
mean,
mean, I'll assume.
Because honestly, I mean, I read the document, I read the application, I read the document, I don't read all the bank statements, because like,
There's
this is
nothing-
just a whole lot of information, right? Like,
Well,
Yeah.
and then begs the question, what would you be 990? No, probably not.
But when the 990 provides you Chris, the staff.
I don't think it does.
so I guess we need to
Because
figure
that's
out,
what I assumed
I was just
the
gonna
bank
say-
balance was like, really, it's
Yeah,
checking
you know-
whether or not what I reported
Yeah.
is accurate.
But nobody else asked for
Nobody
that.
else checks
Yeah.
that it's accurate.
Yeah.
I don't care if
We're
you're
relieved.
accurate.
Yeah.
And that's probably fine.
And we are,
Yeah, it's probably
because we
fine, yeah.
are.
I've been
Yeah.
asked for a 990 before, but no other, like, I've never been asked for checking statements
No.
with any
Trying to
other grant,
reconcile.
Yeah.
never.
And I guess the 990 would just basically be like, this, we're still solvent, like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
like, you would see.
Well, and you are
moving forward, like,
properly registered, obviously
Yes.
IRS recognized nonprofit, which we
Yes.
found out, I mean, you have to submit us your documentation saying, hey, we are anyway,
Right.
so. Okay, savers, we don't need that either, but what do we need?
But yeah, that's the quick.
Yeah.
Coming back, what questions are we trying to answer and what information do we need to be able to do?
I think that it's in here, based on what you're saying, at least part of it is having it could be just a narrative question that's about the marketing side of it and addressing the.
Well, this one, that would make a lot on facility, yeah, yes, we're still on capital improvement.
I would advocate going for a spreadsheet type thing, because
I
what
like-
I'm hearing from Carly is, even with the spreadsheet, sometimes you're like,
Yeah,
I'm sure they both knew what the question was.
yeah,
Oh, that's true.
I want
Yeah.
Narrative,
not,
Yeah.
not just on narrative,
Yeah.
but some people are a little more long-winded.
Yeah.
And not so concise. And so,
Numbers are numbers are numbers.
yes, that's where it is, where it's like, this
Okay.
thing, this number,
So you want to know,
reference.
Could be check boxes. Like, what percent
Yeah.
of your expenses are go to marketing, check the types of marketing you do, and you just multiple
I don't
choice,
even mind, one of the things though sometimes is it does box us in, we're like, oh, we have to, we would have called it that, but they don't know that, yeah, so. There's revenue and we could create.
And those are just examples.
Yeah,
I don't know if we can go in,
not
is
everyone
it an
has.
Excel spreadsheet? I think it's an Excel
I
spreadsheet.
think this one we can go in and we can change
can
it,
change that.
yeah.
Yeah, I know we definitely can, because ours.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
sometimes I'm like, I don't have that, but I have this.
It's
Yeah,
like
right.
that, yeah.
Yeah, that one you definitely change, it's an Excel spreadsheet. I think this one is Excel as well, I'm pretty sure that.
Yeah, it should be, it
And
is.
then you can change the line item titles as needed.
Like, do we really need all three of these columns?
Well, if that gives, so you have what, your past, present, this gives you, this is what we did last year, this gives us what we have for the current year. And then this gives us, if you're in a position to know what you're budgeting for next year.
How many people actually get that?
Upcoming.
Usually it's the current and sometimes the past.
So why ask for it, because then some of those people.
Or I always feel
have-
really
Well,
bad, I'm
the reason why you have last year's actuals and compared to the current budget, is just if there's any change.
But what about the upcoming?
But the upcoming is
But
just.
the upcoming is usually, that can be taken on, I mean, that's, because not everybody's at a certain point in time when they're applying for this, that they even have a clue as or build the budget for next year at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So-
And it's kind of a creative writing exercise.
It is.
Yeah, I mean, if it can't be consistently filled in by every applicant, I mean, I don't think it's feasible.
Never good when you're doing numbers.
But the past actual versus what.
Yeah, and
That makes a lot of
Makes
sense,
sense.
yeah.
Because you can see, because then you can quickly go down, oh, there's change. Well, what was that? Or how much of a change?
I really thought it was only me struggling with this whole checking and balancing out all
No.
the accounts.
That would be a
Kathleen's
great-
right there
I
with you.
always, I always got it, but it was hard.
So if we're not asking you for bank statements and we're just having you fill something out, does that make it easier?
It would,
Yeah,
this is making about a third of the time. That's
Like, it would knock off, so it would knock off 2/3 of the time then?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
I think that's the right move,
Yeah.
because I mean, if it doesn't help us better answer the question, and it's
Yeah.
harder for you, I mean,
I'm totally for that.
So you can do this without bank statements and without having to do that transformation thing you're talking about.
well, most of us, like say you use QuickBooks, you can run a lot of this right out of there, you pick your categories and.
I heard a really, really, really repeated sentiment that people's budgets were not in good order and that they shouldn't, that it should be a problem, a bigger problem.
Yes.
But then it is, if they're completely whacked. So how do we get that clear?
Oh, I don't think we should accept grants that don't have proper budgets.
Facility or event
No event.
or event.
So
Facility,
just
I
events.
don't know that we had facilities that don't fill out the budgets properly.
Okay.
But like, those event grants, they don't balance.
And they need to
They
know and understand that they can call Chris and I up until November 15th.
Yeah,
And we really will help them.
Oh, you will, you guys
Yeah,
are really
that's
great.
great. And I will say, like, I'm on the American Cultural Development Board, which is the county coalition, and the budgets we get are for events of any form, for anything that they're applying for, they run the gamut from outstanding to, oh, we think we might spend $400 on coffee. And it's just super extra vague, and so the super extra vague ones get secrets. So yeah, it is hard to get, and these are, again, you'd be surprised with saying, oh.
I just think when someone asking for $10,000 should be able to fill out a budget so that there's no problems. Because that's not small change.
And how are we gonna know that they're accountable for the funds?
Yeah. And it is a lot of the times where actually, well, some of the budgets didn't balance. And then it is good that they put information in, like, in text, but then I'm like, why? I shouldn't have to read a whole page to figure out when there's a spreadsheet that's supposed to be little boxes that tell me the things. And that's where I find, like, I spent a lot of time reading grants, and obviously I like it because I'm still here. But I felt, I mean, we had a lot of grants this year, and there was, I spent a lot more time because I was looking at budgets going, okay, how does this doesn't work, and I'm trying to answer these questions, and I did get to the point where I was like, yeah, zero, it didn't budget, it didn't balance, I can't.
And I also from a staff perspective, we don't go through, once we receive. we don't go through everything.
Yeah, no, and you
Because I
shouldn't.
because I want the board to be able to score them as they've been received.
And we do put a note in there, it's like, these are things we're supposed to balance, so I think it just needs, again, it needs to be stressed, and if we made a decision not to accept unbalanced budgets or whatever budgets that don't work, then the applicants would have to make sure that those things do work.
That's, you
But
mean,
that's part of
just
the
other
scoring.
than giving them a 0 for that portion.
Or maybe it's just like, if this does not, well, it says that if it doesn't balance, you get 0. I don't know, they're losing points, they're just like, they don't care.
I've heard of these where the event's like a fundraiser, like, you know, a plant sale, and yeah, it makes more sense to have more revenue and expenses, but by definition, you know, it doesn't balance, you know?
Yeah, well, from a budgeting standpoint, you always have more revenue.
Yeah.
You just don't want to make sure, you want to make sure that your expenditures aren't exceeding what you anticipate receiving. If that's the case, you're out of balance. So, yeah. Run out of business, which is.
But see, if they tell us that they're like, well, my thing's gonna raise 50,000,
That's where.
and
Yeah,
I'm gonna ask you
logic
for
has to
10.
come into play that.
Yeah.
Do you really believe what they say?
Yeah, I think that if things are so messed up that they're getting a 0 for budget, it's almost, that's disqualifying to me. I mean, that's like, gosh,
It's on the
that-
verge of this.
yeah.
Does it need to be so, or will they
Points for the
probably
budget sort
not?
of thing are so, I think are intentionally low so that it doesn't really impact the overall score that much. But yeah, you could do it if they can't do a good budget. Does it disqualify? Maybe they're just not good with the budget, but they put on a great event. It's hard to say.
Not good at, I don't think you can trust somebody who runs an event, to make their money if they're that good.
But these are reimbursement grants anyway, so they have to
Yeah,
put on the.
that's,
event.
yeah,
And
That- that
if
is
they-
something.
If it actually ends up losing the money, then even with the TOT,
yeah,
at least they didn't lose out.
yeah, that's true.
So this also relates to another thing that we talked about, just kind of the previous TOT board meeting, is how to approach issues where an applicant would provide information beyond, you know, what was in the actual paper of the grant during meetings. Like, for example, they forgot to fill something in, they said, oh, we have 500 people coming to this event, but on the application it's blank. Do we take that information that we received, you know, verbally into consideration, or do we focus only on stuff that's in the actual paper itself?
I think it's not fair to take information after the deadline.
Yeah.
I would object to that as
Mhm.
an applicant, and if I were on any other board, I'd be like, oh, sorry.
I have found it really frustrating when that happens, when somebody's done a really poor job and then they're a good public speaker.
Mhm.
So they,
Yeah.
or even if it's somebody that, they just really take advantage of the opportunity to make a case for their organization when the door is opened, it's not a soapbox time. And then you I always feel like, gosh, I should have talked. I should have
Thank
like.
you for not talking more than.
Yeah.
But you do feel that way, like, did I not make enough of a case because somebody else has
Right.
gone on and on and on about their organization?
I don't think we should accept testimony after the fact.
Yeah, I think if that's gonna be the case, I mean, what's the purpose therefore of asking questions of clarification if we're not accepting information beyond what's in the original application?
Never seen another grant that does
Same.
that,
Same,
never ever.
it's, yeah, if we mess up, it's on us.
Mm.
God help us.
And I'm all for giving people a little grace. I mean, this process isn't to trick anybody or like a gotcha sort of thing, you know?
No.
But goes back to the transparency level.
Yeah.
I think that we as a board of the city, we're overly transparent
Mhm.
to a fault.
Yeah.
It allows those changes, those received. This is how you score, this is what you score.
Yeah.
I mean, I just think from our standpoint, the standpoint of the applicants, I mean, it's just less stressful for us having to, you know, sort through all the comments, it's less stressful for the applicants having to answer questions and fill in all the gaps. That's kind of my thinking.
I think people might do a better job on the applications if they didn't think they could. Because some of the people are repeat offenders that, you know, they everything kind of skip up the time on that.
What I don't understand is if you're gonna ask for $10,000 or $20,000, you should at least be able to balance the budget to justify or giving them that money. I mean, I don't understand it, why we even proceed beyond that if they can't do that. I mean, you go into a bank and ask them for money and they say, what are you gonna do with that money? If you can't tell them, they're not gonna give it to you. I don't understand.
No, I've also seen beyond budget, additional questions deviate from the original grant application. That answer to that question is going to influence how this is scored. And that wasn't the person's intent, but it's.
Yeah, and it comes up to the point, you know, why are we asking the questions if it's not to get more information to, you know, alter how we approach and score? Because if that's not our intent and don't think we should be doing that, then we shouldn't be asking people questions, you know?
Well, it's also not fair to ask some people questions because they didn't do a good job. I mean, they did a good job, and then the person that did a bad job gets asked questions, it gets to really.
Gets to give extra points.
Yeah, because sometimes they really do a great job with it of making the event so exciting sounding. It's like, oh, wow, this is a great event, but you wouldn't have known it maybe if you just read the grant.
Yeah.
Chris, is that required? Those two consider held, or is that just the like an outcome?
So.
I'm trying to.
So actually, there was a board member that made a motion, accepted that they would require all the grant applicants to attend the meetings on which their application was going to be. Well, you know, one, most likely in general, you'll ask them additional questions. If that's something the subcommittee wants to take a look at and say, hey, make a recommendation. We're not going to require the organizations to attend the December, January, and February meetings, then that's up to you, and then you can do, and the reason why is so that we strictly rely on the applications as received.
And I think that we should rely on applications as received.
Yeah, I think so too.
I think it's fair.
The reason, as I recall, is that we had that it was decided to make it a requirement for them to be there is because there'd be a question and the person would be there and then they'd say, oh, well, you'd contact them and they'll be here next time. So then the next month, that application has to be brought back up again because that person hadn't come when they were told to be there.
But now we're not gonna actually ask questions.
Yeah.
And previous
It's
to
all
that,
there,
it was-
yeah.
Cause the other grants do that.
No.
No, the other,
Correct,
Yeah.
no, most granting organizations don't do that.
the door shuts.
I
I've
mean,
never ever seen them do it.
You
And
never
it
get to
was-
peek behind the wall
No.
to see what's
Yeah,
going on back there.
yeah.
Okay, I'm all good with that.
This
Let's
is
do
the
like other
wizard,
guys.
definitely.
Yeah.
And
All best
and
practices.
previous to that, it was an option, it was highly recommended that you attend,
Yes.
you know, in case
I
it
mean,
was a question. But
I
then-
like knowing who's applied for the grants and actually seeing them like face to face because it also shows me that,
They're interested.
yeah, like they do care. But I don't think it is fair that some get asked questions and some
Others
don't and, yeah,
Or they have to show up and they anticipating a question and that gets asked.
yeah, actually, I did have someone who was like, ask me nothing, and I was like, sorry.
Yeah, no questions.
But, yeah, so I think we should make a recommendation to the board that we accept applications in like, there is no follow-up questions on applications, like once an applicant submits, it's like, it's sealed and that's what we're reviewing.
Mhm.
And that's
I
it,
agree with that.
because if there is something that there is a question about, then it's like, that's where we can write a note for if we want to give feedback to the applicant to tell them for a future year, like, you were missing this from the application, which is why you scored this. And actually on the rubric, we do have this part that like if we score someone low on something, we have to put a note of like why we're scoring them 0.
Did not put how many people were attending this event.
Yes. Yeah, so.
No date.
Yeah, no idea.
Another way that can help quality control, and a lot of grants do this, is it will be like required. Like you try to move, it'll say next, nope, you missed this one and you have to go back and fill that in. Because there's something to be said for, you could just make a human error and like you misattaching something. And I hate to have like, they had all their stuff there, but somehow they didn't attach one thing
Yeah.
or something. It seems like,
I think that's where Chris and Kelly are just, they do that, like.
What's that?
Like if it was a,
Quality
didn't, yeah, you didn't attach something, so that's different,
Yeah.
that was
We
like.
did
think we
have
have
one
to
year that
clarify
did
that.
attach a budget. Yeah. And
So
we let them submit a budget.
But to me, that's different than
that is different. So
saying like,
there's a,
Carly, what are you gonna do at this event?
Yeah, oh no, yeah, that's a big difference.
yeah.
yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, you didn't tell us who's going to be attending or what your marketing was. Would you like to tell us about that?
Yeah.
But we need to be specific, I think. That's why I asked this question, because if we say there's no follow-up, the lock is locked and then there's no follow-up, but then if somebody did, the attachment technology failed or whatever they did, are we truly saying there's no second chance there? Or is there gonna be a quality control check that say there's, I don't know, if it's found that a budget was missed or something and do we have the applications that can say, hey, this was missed and it won't let it go to the next step? Ours is kind of different, the way it's attachments.
So we have the attachments are one thing.
Yeah.
Obviously, if they don't load it, I mean, who's to say whether or not they didn't have that form to attach to it? But I mean, the budget should be obviously, we do a technical review. Is there a budget attachment? Is the IRS thing?
501c3 letter.
501c letter attached. Those are the two main things.
Okay.
Above and beyond that, if they just don't answer more questions in the application, you know, during the process, there are some steps required to move on to the next piece of it. I don't know that I don't think that we've set it up to where it requires an answer in each section to be able to move on to the next section.
No, because you let them go through and save midway,
Yeah.
so they kind of fill it out
Correct.
at leisure.
At leisure but we're not doing a technical review to say, you know, I mean, at the basic, it's like, okay, was there an answer on all the questions? Okay, yes. You know, whether we may miss one, but if that's the question of the board. Do you feel that filling out one little question is of high enough work to go back to request that information? Or is it, we'll take it as it came in because that's how it's spent?
I think we take it as
And if you're leaning towards that, take it as submitted, that's perfectly fine, because that's usually how other grant systems work. Is either, you know, once you've submitted and sent it,
Should be done.
Yeah.
it should be
That's
done.
it.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I think that's how we
You don't
should
hit
do it.
that submit button until you're
I'm
done.
fine with taking it as submitted, assuming that every box in which something is required has at least something in it, you know? Whether it doesn't make any sense, it's,
But
you
if
know, on
they
the
choose to
applicant,
send
so-
us an application that only lists their name,
Well, then they would,
then-
then none of the boxes would have, you know?
like, but that's it, it's like however they submit.
Yeah.
Then that's how it is.
And we can be sure, because the culture is changing this year, to make sure the board understands that and that what you said about there's a place for them to put their questions and notes and concerns and could have done better on, you know, the things that might have been discussed at those meetings will be in the notes that the board gives to give them feedback.
Yeah, we do ask the board members to, when you do your score sheet, to put in notes.
And you
on
guys are
the
gonna
application.
have to do a good job of that if,
Not
you know.
everybody provides a,
I
you know,
provide notes when I grade zeros, but I'm sorry, grants don't,
It's
you
hard
don't
to do.
normally get to go to a
No,
grant and be
no.
like,
You
I
don't.
didn't do well, why not? And they
Yeah.
don't coach you through it, like, we are so generous in
Yeah.
how we operate with this.
But I think
So-
especially for the year where we're changing that culture,
But we're
it
not
would
asking
behoove
them
the board to
anything
just
weird, I
do
mean,
a good job of
Yeah.
putting those notes in writing that they would have needed to know why they didn't do well, you know.
I think if they read, if they read, they'll do well.
Yeah, there you go.
It is, read. I know.
Yeah.
No, and the culture I envision changing is from, like, oh, we're talking about this grant as board members, and then somebody just turns to applicant.
Yeah.
And that there's that wall.
Yeah.
That continues between board members and
And-
never the fourth wall.
Yeah.
And you're correct about that, and in the public meetings, the way public meetings are supposed to be ran, the board members on the board are the ones that get to talk and discuss. And there's only a certain point in time in which questions can be raised by members of the public that are in the audience. And that's, you know, if it's something that's on at the beginning, when they can make a comment at the beginning. But yeah, you're breaking the wall, that fourth wall. If you're talking and you say, oh, so-and-so, what do you think about that? And allowing that public comment to then come into the board's discussion. That's supposed to be a no-no. And I haven't done a good job at keeping the board from doing that. That's my issue. That's my willingness to be flexible and wanting to help everybody to be successful in what they're doing. But I do see that there is a flaw in that discussion should take place amongst the board members who have been assigned or given the rights to make that decision based on what they want to do and not be influenced by the audience.
Would it be typical that for other organizations granting processes for the board to even discuss that publicly?
No,
No.
no, not at all.
Not at
That's what
all.
I was just gonna ask is,
Yeah.
you know, is this a requirement?
Public meetings are required by government, so by IRS standards. This is your quasi judicial, quasi government board, and because of that, you have to have public meetings, it has to be public. Now, like I said, the standard process is that there's a point in time when the public can make comment or provide testimony, but the regular part of the meeting is just the discussion between the board member and the action items that we take.
However, does the board have to discuss grants? I believe that in some grants, they're just scored. You don't have like you sit around the table and talk about this grant that can go into the next one. Because some of ours, that's how it is now. So it'll be like, oh, T puts up next with the plant event grant. Does anybody have any questions? No, everybody's good. We go on to the next one. Do you need, or is there value in that between the board members having that? Because isn't that a way also that a board member might really be influencing another board member's opinion? Like, well, I didn't think it was very clear about the diversity. Oh, but I go to their events. I've seen that they do this. Or should it be truly just based on what you read as a board member? Why do you need another board member?
Because
to
that would be
interpret
introducing
it?
material that's beyond the scope of the application, you know?
Yeah, so that's why I'm just wondering, can't the board score outside of a meeting environment without dialogue? What's the value?
I think we generally do. I mean,
Yeah,
I
so,
do.
so this was because of it being a forum to ask questions. So if we're not asking questions, then would there still be a reason for the board to discuss this in an open meeting?
We just got rid of 2 more meetings then. Oh, what is I
So we'll send you all 65 applications next year and tell you to bring your scores.
Does it create some accountability for the board members? Because like you said, it's 65. So if I'm a board member, I know, okay, in December, I need to have read these.
That's good for me to quit a bunch of my time, so.
But I agree with what's being said, of like, if it does, I've watched it happen.
Yeah.
It influences people's perspective.
It does. And I've been on the side of having something positive said about that, like, oh, that's nice, that, you know,
Yeah.
but then if nobody knows that particular event and there's not anything about that, then that kind of puts them at a disadvantage.
Exactly. There is no easy answer to this one.
So we'll try and do some research from the staff perspective. What kind of things and questions should we address?
We could have to submit our scores in. Like, okay, we read the facilities, we submit then, okay, we read those, we submit those. So that way we're still accountable, like to make sure
Meeting,
that,
yeah,
you know, and
deadlines.
it's like all the things are submitted at that time and
So you,
just
so
for
you want me to hold
sections.
your feet to the fire, and in December.
Well, I'm
have-
fine. I live by deadlines, so.
It was just a question.
Well,
Is this part
I
of the
know
question?
that there are scores submitted that have waited all the way until after the February meeting to do all their scores.
Yeah.
in court. So I know it happens. I mean,
Yeah.
But I like the idea,
procrastination can be the
of-
best of us.
the grant, the facility ones get scored, you know, in January, and capital ones get scored, you know, I mean, put those
Yeah.
on still
Yeah,
those,
so just December,
Meeting
January,
dates.
February.
yeah.
That's one way of doing it, and then. And
Maybe
then we
that's
don't
all
have,
of the-
then we, and then hopefully,
I do think our numbers will continue to be large, I think we'll be on the day of,
Oh,
you
yeah,
know,
I agree.
25 total and
I
into the
Well,
day of
work's got down on the
50
street.
plus total.
I would even say, as a starting point on this, if everybody wasn't comfortable with just going all in on this big change, we could even, forgive me, keep the facilities going as they are now, where we receive a larger amount of money and we're there to answer questions. If again, it's like everybody's gonna be asked a couple of questions and it's consistent. It's all of the smaller things, all of the events, question after question. So I would get it if they said, we wanna be able to ask facilities questions.
It's
They get a
pretty
lot of
standard on
money.
the facilities though, because we don't have our facilities are the same facilities every year. And
Yeah.
and when you look at what grants we received, there's no one that's really there's no one that can become a facility because you have to have 2 successful grants and actually have a facility. So, or some kind of venue or some kind of something.
you have to have a venue.
Yeah.
That's with the city limits, but there
Yeah.
are some organizations that have.
Do they have a time limit of how long ago they have to have submitted or like done successfully? So it could be like in the last 20 years they've successfully,
If I have a record of it.
yeah, okay.
That would be a loophole to fix probably, because truly you wouldn't want somebody who's been that long.
Yeah.
Prove that.
Yeah, we should put a
Right-
caveat on that one.
Right now, it's like, if you know that you're gonna apply for a facility, in the manual says, so if you look at the.
Right, it says you have to
by
have.
July first, notify staff of your intention to
Mhm.
apply as a facility owner. So we do have that in the manual, so I think it does come after the fact. That is one, not
Well,
that loophole.
And maybe that's a parking lot item that we should bring up board members to the rest of our board to
Number
address.
6. New facility operators must have executed minimum 3 successful special events.
Yeah. But we should put a limit on how long it can't be like 20 years ago, they submitted 3 successful.
Applicants have been satisfied with those sectors should provide a letter of intent in July of each year prior to applying for special facility operator.
There should just be a date added to that, a grant, whatever, within the last 5 years or something, a date of. All things must start and end.
Having satisfied with both criteria over the last 5 years.
Sure. Because it might take them 3 years to submit or complete 3 successful grants and then.
Speakers are-
Yeah.
promotions.
What page is this on again?
Page 4.
Oh, three,
4.
3 and 4.
3 and 4. The language itself is 4.
It's saying that they have to have submitted, they have to have completed their grants within the last 5 years.
Okay.
If they wanted to apply as a facility operator.
I had, I don't know when the appropriate time to ask it, but I just have a question that's kind of out there about the facility application. So is it okay time to ask?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so one of the things that I have not thought this through, but I've always kind of wondered if there would be a way that the facilities could do a application that then has an event component built to it, or especially event component, because some of the questions were like, either you're cutting and pasting or you're, and I feel like, gosh, I need to reword it for the event one, the event one's exactly what I said here. And it seems like some of it almost could flow in, like you're only answering questions 8 through 15, not 1 through 7, because you've already done those on 2 other applications. And it's not that we're not willing to do the work, it's just, it's kind of just redundant.
I mean, it almost could be that like the event grant says, are you a facility operator? And like, if so, then.
I mean, you could just say in the box, this information is listed in my facility grant application, or something like that, you know?
It just seems really redundant for your reading too. Just an idea that is I've been
Kind of the
writing.
way the project versus event is, if project, then do this, if
Yeah.
event, then do that. And it could say, if a facility operator with an event, you know, and then that,
Complete
there'd
this
be a
part.
section.
Because I've had applications before, not necessarily grants, but other types of applications where it says if this, then in kind of like the event versus skip to question 6.
Yeah.
Keep in mind that facility operators, everyone can actually, I mean, you could be a facility operator and still have 2 events or a capital improvement in the event. So that, you know, you have event 1 and event 2.
There's a reason why there's separate applications for each one. It's easier to track.
And maybe it's
You can
just
copy and
okay if we,
paste, I mean, that's always. an
you don't
option.
care if we answer the same exact way on all of them.
That's the answer you want.
Consistency.
If it's the right answer, well written,
Yeah.
we can look at it again.
Some answers that don't change for me.
We're gonna be doing another meeting like this, right?
Yes.
I'm gonna look at all of the applications again, and you know, sometimes there's so much time in between, it's like, how is the thing? And just see if there's a way that might help that flow, that wouldn't create extra work, but maybe simplify people on your side, the reviewer side and the writer's side.
Yeah.
Have you guys ever thought about that? I'll do what it takes because we appreciate the funds, but I also, there's also other grants that we could be working on or floors that we're scrubbing or whatever.
Yeah.
We're doing some
This is sort of a minor thing for me, but the only issue I think with copy and pasting is if there's information from last year you carry over and it's like really obvious, like looking
yeah,
forward to a
yeah.
great 2022, you know,
Yeah.
or something like that, you know?
Yes, like,
Or mentioning a publication that doesn't exist and hasn't for 5
yes.
years.
Yes, good old
Yeah, I
Salem
just
Weekly.
mean
2020 is
cutting and pasting within that year. So you've just done your facility one and then you're answering the event one.
Mhm.
Is it okay to use the exact same block of copy? Or one application to another? Because I always try to reword.
No, I'd rather you use the same block.
Yeah.
Because don't try and make it sound different.
As long as you update anything that needs to be updated for the given year, so
Yeah,
something that's super obvious.
I mean, and that's just it, and I think it's just that like updating, so like you can even like, okay, our summary about our organization, like, we haven't changed, so we're gonna use it, but if there's like key things like, oh, we did make a renovation, so like, just making sure it's up to date. Cause then it also shows that you actually read your application before submitting it. And I do fear that there are a couple applications that they didn't read it before they submitted and just took advantage of that we've given them grants in the past. And that they're gonna get it again because they done it before.
Is that in the tips that you should give it to somebody else to read before you send it in? Because that is a really good tip that I always give to people that are just starting to write grants, and write it and then hand it to somebody who knows nothing about your event to read it, and they'll find errors every time. Yeah.
I agree, that's a good process. I just don't know quite how you have to know my format.
Yeah.
Spell format.
I don't think that's something we ought to enter into.
And you
Oh,
give me
that's,
credit.
I guess it's just a
If,
best
you
practice.
know, if you can't figure out what's the best way to apply your grant, you're in trouble right from the beginning.
Yeah, proofreading.
We spend too much time carrying these people through the process. And I've been carried through the process, I know. I know how forgiving we are.
We're very accommodating.
Is there a way to make it downloadable, the application?
Yeah.
That's one of the things that is very common in applications, that it just,
Downloadable while you're writing it or downloadable when it's, no, 'cause when
While
it's
you're
done, you
writing
get
it.
sent to.
Well, see, right, the system that we're using right now is like an online survey.
Yeah.
Format.
yep, and it is big improvement.
And otherwise, we'd be reverting back to a fillable PDF form.
We used to have to rush here before 5 o'clock on the last day, and like you'd hit a red light, be like, oh, I have never.
I like to say, the little PDFs are better than they used to be, because you can actually submit them online.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, you can now.
They're better about limiting word counts too.
Yeah.
I will harp on it forever that
But
somehow we get more answers.
I have told the orientation, I've told folks that, hey, in the manual, that's all the questions are on the application. Go through that, put it in a Word document.
That's what I did. Yeah.
And answer your questions in a Word doc. And then just copy and paste. I mean, it's. Well, there's the tip.
Yeah.
I have a question around the budget bonus for the facility operators. I've assumed that was put in there to support organizations that were impacted by COVID. But it's somewhat of an odd math situation.
What are we looking at?
It's on page 16. It essentially gives someone a bonus point for having their revenues exceed expectations.
I'd be for just dropping that question, I mean,
Get rid of bonus questions.
yeah.
I'll tell you flat out, no one got bonus points from me because I was like, I was like, this, why are there bonus points? And maybe that's a me trying to calculate, rationalize things, and it might just be a me issue, but I was like,
Yeah, and because this was a pandemic thing, is because, we had so many people just not getting the revenue.
Actually, I don't think it's a pandemic thing. As I look at the structure of the questions, I think this is more of a scoring piece. There was a leftover question in the application and how to include that in the scoring piece. Because it's really saying, does the explanation for expenditures exceed revenues seem reasonable? And the only reason we're asking that is if there's a question on the application at the very end that says, did you read short?
There's points given or.
I remember when this got added, that's so big.
well, I guess that's just it. If it's a bonus, like, kind of maybe in the way of, does this apply? If the situation applies and they have a good answer for it, you can give them 1 point. If it doesn't apply, why should they not get the point? So, but they should already get the point, like,
If it doesn't apply, then there's no point.
but then why should they get a bonus point?
If they
If
have-
it-
Why is it a point though, when it's your chance to make a better case for yourself, it shouldn't be any points at all. I mean, I think it's fine to be able to answer it because you might have had some financial thing that you feel that you need to explain. But I shouldn't get a point because I'm doing that. I should be glad I can save my skin by giving more insight.
And I think you're on the right track, I think, with that, in the sense that, yeah, this was a question that if you experienced a year in which you had shortfall in revenues and had to spend more to keep money from out of that, you're explaining your situation, your financial situation to the board, so that way they know if there's a real trouble, that's gonna be ongoing, or if it's just one-time thing or situational. And so there, that question was existing, and it wasn't it wasn't part of the points system for the rubric. So that's why. Now, all of the bonus points, regardless of which application it is, the maximum allowed right now is the 25 points. So
Someone can't get 26 or 25.
you can't, there have been applicants, or sorry, board members who have scored 26, 27 points. And I had to correct it back down to 25, because that's the maximum.
You get the 27 points, is there 2 bonus points?
There are a couple, there are
Yeah.
2 bonus points, yes.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And so that would put you over the 25, and you're already hitting the max right there regardless, so. It's just,
That's an
the bonus points,
overachiever.
yes, the bonus points were really meant to help those that are struggling with
Weak, some of the area.
weak applications, some of their.
But I do understand that there might have been a situation some year, like maybe you had a major financial expense because of some cost to operate that was unusual. And you'd like to be able to tell that. I don't know, is there anywhere else that you could really explain that?
Provide a balanced budget with supporting documentation. Rubric is it's balanced and realistic, so expenses equal to expected revenue, 3 points. Some errors, but reasonable, and then 0 points if it's unreasonable.
So we could just say for that question, you know, under some areas but reasonable, just put 2 points, comma, explain.
And that's even interesting. It goes from the balance, the budget is balanced and realistic to then, did the person make errors in writing the budget? Which is, those are 2 different things. One is the documentation and one is the organization's budget. And how they're managing the business.
I do know we all use this explaining a lot during COVID. I just remember all of us having to put something in there, and there could be other times that we've done that.
So is it fine because it needs to have a way to fit into the rubric when appropriate, or does it get struck?
I'm looking for dropping the actual bonus points, but moving the text, giving the opportunity for explanation, and incorporating into the question itself. So you could have it as, you know, please provide a balanced budget for documentation. If the budget does not balance, please provide additional information about past or future financial challenges, how the organization moves forward to address these issues.
Yeah.
I answered that question. I brought my budget or mine along, and I went through and explained about the challenges of the past 2 years and COVID and how things have not been as they had in years prior. Do you use that one? Yeah.
It's still, I mean, it's still, when COVID's over, but there's still echoes. Some real structural changes.
Yeah, and I think you could have the kind of categories like 2 points, some areas but reasonable. You could say something like, budget does not balance, but a reasonable explanation provided.
I don't remember any unusual budgets, any unbalanced error budgets. It's really the event grants that come across as all the things. And if someone's submitting a grant that, I mean, they would just look and be like, okay, I'm gonna get 2 points if it's balanced and realistic, so let's make sure it balances.
So was that bonus point available for events too, or just facilities?
It's just
There was
facilities.
Yeah.
There's different,
For
Yeah.
events.
And we can make that the second thing, this is not balanced but reasonable explanation, 1 to 2 points. Because you might provide an explanation, but the explanation might just not be very good,
yeah, we can also choose not to give 2 points and just give 1 point.
Yeah.
Anyway, or 1.5.
Yeah, something like that, so anywhere between 1 and 2, and 0 would be, well,
Yeah.
it doesn't balance, and you didn't explain why, so.
That's it. But that isn't just about balancing, like, the one up here is about balancing, but the budget bonus thing that's there, that's because your revenue is short compared to your expenses.
Specific
That's
to the
not a-
facility operator.
Yeah, that's not an error, it's
Yeah.
just a
Reality.
Reality of
Yeah.
operations.
yeah.
Have any other thoughts on just around the on the facility? I don't know, I mean, like. Between capital. Are there things you want me to address?
Yeah, so one thing I was thinking about with the very first question, this is kind of true for the event applications, is if the first question is sort of like correlated, like too correlated with the questions about the funding goals. Because I'm thinking for the event application, like for example, is this a high quality event or project? I can't imagine there'd be like a reason where you would get full points for this question, but not get full points for the 9 points you would get by doing each of the funding goals. And that they're getting at sort of similar things. I guess my comment is is the question diverse enough in terms of what it's getting at that it asks for information that's different than where it's asked elsewhere? If it's essentially getting at the same thing, you could take those points and allocate them someplace else. Yeah, so. Yes, this would be the very first question for facility operators and for the event application. So if you provide evidence of quality program, including mission statement aligns with TOT goals with clear performance indicators. Like if they're doing those things, it should be reflected in the in the funding goals where you get 9 points total for it.
So you're talking about describing your facility.
I'm talking about the scoring criteria.
So the scoring criteria correlate back to the question on the application. So
No, I'm talking about the first question of the scoring criteria. The first question that's worth 2 points if it's too similar to the questions about the funding goals. Page 14.
So page 14.
Yeah.
Is the organization for quality programming and services. Okay, which is covered underneath question number 11 on the form application, describe your facility. Whereas 13 describes your organization's program, services, activities, and staffing. So what is your question about? Question points?
Yeah, I guess is the point is is the question itself or what you're scoring on too similar to the things that are reflected in the CTBAP funding goals that's later on in the score. If we think it's different enough, then I'm fine keeping it in, but
Well, because these questions are being tied back to the answer on number 13, describing the organization's program, services, activities, and staffing.
Mm-hmm.
So if you scratch question 13, how would you score it? These questions are allowing you to provide points to how the organization is describing their program, services, activities, and staffing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Is the link between the two?
Yeah, I guess you're right. Sorry, maybe the wording of this again.
It could be the wording.
It's maybe too simple, yeah.
It's kind of breaking up the application question into scorable pieces, breaking down, okay, 2 points for, so organizational structure is 6 points total. And within that, there's 3 questions of how you can answer, how well did the organization answer? We'll talk about the program. We get 2 points for the program and services, is the order quality programming and services. Is the staffing sufficient? They talk about what makes them think that they've got sufficient staffing.
Yeah.
And then, is there volunteers? Is the organization attracting volunteers? And there's evidence of that. So,
I think we're slightly confusing is that it's not, here's the question, and here's the exact, like, word for word, item for item on the criteria. Like, if you read through the criteria and if an organization or an event or project has, like, covers all that stuff in all these, then it matches up.
I guess for me, it's more obvious in terms of the event scoring, because the first question for the event scoring is this a high quality event for project? And the 3 points are, the things that are later referenced in, the funding goals. And it's asking it, maybe not so much for the facility, but I think in the event, it is asking sort of the same thing again. Or is asking it across 2 different questions.
I think the questions are designed in the sense of scoring the written to isolate the application that you're looking at. So if you're looking at the questions in the scoring rubric for the event / project, then you look at the questions on the event, you should be looking at that project application. And the facility is based off the facility application. How well do they answer those questions? They may be similar, but if you're applying for a facility operating grant, then we shouldn't be questioning, using the event scoring criteria to evaluate the facility operating. I guess it's kind of which.
No, it's something. Sorry, I might not be explaining this super well. So when I'm looking at the event or project scoring criteria, the first question is this a high quality event for project? And the 3 things that are scored on are the things that are later asked in the funding goals, that you get 3 points for each. I guess my question is this a different enough question that that's worth including, or just transferring those points that you would have got for those questions to 1 point each for the funding goals?
I think they need to outline, because we say provide a description of the event. So is it a high quality event or project? And those things relate to how they describe their events. And then later, when we ask about how it fits in with the goals, I think it needs both parts. I think because it's like what is the event, and then how does it work with our goals?
Okay, I can kind of see that. So I'm just trying to think of it just to better allocate points. There's just a more efficient way to be doing this,
I do think we need to streamline. I think we made great changes last year with clarity for stuff. I think there's more ways we can streamline.
I'm not streamlining the application itself. We're streamlining scoring of it. There's one change.
Oh, I know.
Next vote.
I know.
Well, we have to start on one side or the other, right?
Yeah.
So, but
And it's
I
probably
look at,
easier to start with the questions on the application
yeah,
and then identify what correlates on this form.
I think
Yeah.
we have such, it's a complex rubric, but it's not, like, it's like if a person applying reads through everything, it's like, okay, this is what they're looking for.
Right.
These are all the things that, like, no matter what question or like how they fit in, like all of this information has to be in my application somewhere. So which is really great that way. Where it gets complicated is that they don't match up A, B, B. It's like, go through this and know this stuff. Use what you've read there to answer these questions. And I think that's where some people feel that they're, well, or where they're not getting the clarity and they give us the same answers for some things. So that's where I'm like, okay, we're not asking the question properly, because all the information is in the rubric, but the question is not coming across so that it's two different questions. Because I do see the repetitiveness.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I was
answers.
getting at. I mean, I don't want to ask repetitive questions that don't have differing enough information.
And I think, what's it, one of them that I saw it on, I mean, everything it does, it's the event and project application.
Yeah, I apologize if I wasn't explaining my points super well, so.
No,
See, I'm not here to confuse you
there are a
guys,
lot
so.
of words on the page.
Yeah.
I think it's, where was it? Between,
The applications that are copied there show the strike through and red.
yeah,
Show the changes that we've already made, if that helps.
well, and it's, I think where we were getting like replicated information was for people not understanding, like, we talk about marketing and we're like, what are you doing for marketing, or whatever, I don't know, like how they were explaining it was like describe in detail marketing and promotion plans, and they give us that same answer for like how it impacts the goals or something. Like there was repetitive stuff, but it's just a matter of adding clarity to like, when we ask you to describe this, you know, there's something there, my brain stopped working and
Yeah, no, I'm,
I started,
maybe I'm just tired too.
Yeah.
We're looking at, coming to the end of
yeah.
2 hours, so.
I think that's something, well, obviously the event grant, considering that's where we got the bulk of our grants this year is, you know, something we should review
Spend
at
more
another
time.
time. Yeah, that's what you said.
I think the one question that I'd like to explore next time too, and maybe it gets less important than the facility operating one, but is the one about the staffing sufficient? Because now, I mean, I only have 3 of us, we could use 8 full-time, I mean, you know, we could use so much more, so is it sufficient just because I work too much? Or is it sufficient because we're having good programs still? That one has always kind of been one that I've struggled with. What makes it sufficient? I mean, we have.
Maybe sufficient isn't the right word.
Yeah.
It's like what kind of job do they do for what they have at hand? But it is kind of that, because as I said, you work too much. Like, because you don't have the necessary resources to hire a bunch more people to fill in roles.
Should
Yeah, I
we
can
not
see
get
it.
the grant
No,
because of
that's-
that?
Yeah, no, because if anything, it shows that you can leverage money to make it go just as far or further. So I can totally see us revisiting, and it is probably a case of just what language are we using and what is the outcome we're looking for? Like, what does the answer look like that is successful and sufficient? Is such an open word, which actually brings you to another little note here. I think we need to have, sorry, Chris, another piece of information in here, like definitions, like a little appendix of definitions, like when we say DEI, what is it? What is the definition of that? And when we say links, what's the definition of a link? Or certain things that I've seen in other grant applications where it's like, here are some key terms. When we talk about things, this is what it means. So that way, when everyone's reading it, filling out the application or grading it, we're all on the same page using the same language.
Sometimes you can hover over the word and it'll show you
Yeah,
what it's referring to brief.
but what you use for your browser is different than mine.
It's true.
Yeah, just read.
Oh, I mean, within the application, they've made it so
Yeah,
that you hover over it, it'll give you more info if you want it.
Yeah.
Right then and there.
You know, actually, just reading this question again about the staffing is sufficient, the second bullet point we read at 1.4 says, staffing is sufficient to support their facility, but relies heavily on paid staff to administer deliver programs. That to me kind of gets at the issue of volunteering too, and that gets into sort of the material covered in the next question. Because the applicant, this is on page 14.
Oh, okay, reading through it.
Yeah. The river. Because it seems like what we're asking is, do you have a healthy mix of both volunteers and staff?
Point is it a healthy?
Yeah.
Depends on the size of the organization. Just for one facility that might be,
Mhm.
really well staffed, to the ones that have to rely on volunteers.
Also, you guys might not admit how much extra that you bring, or, like, how many people you're lacking.
But to go back to the application, some of the questions that are being answered or asked are number 12, it's on page 5. Provide the number of full-time staff and part-time staff. And then question number 16 talks about serving the roles of volunteers. From the perspective of the board, you're just wanting to know what kind of staff, what staffing levels there really are.
Yeah.
I don't know that you're looking for anything more than that to compare necessarily, saying whether it's good or bad.
And how would you
But-
know?
Yeah,
Maybe if you
but
look
as far
at
as the
Salem
scoring
Art
report-
Association, they probably, I don't know how many they have, but I dare guess like 20 to 30 people. I have 3, so better.
Yeah, I think we need to better clarify what we mean by sufficient, just from a definition standpoint.
Yeah, I think that's a matter of us clarifying.
Mhm.
Yeah, because I don't have a problem answering this question, but then when I've always gone and looked at the criteria on. Is it bad that I have this thing?
Yeah, what does it mean and why do we care?
Yeah,
Yeah. Right, because as if you wouldn't, if someone wanted to give you staff, as if
Yeah.
you wouldn't be like, yes, please.
Bring them on. But then I'm gonna need that explanation for why I'm not making enough money, because I'm spending it all on staff I can't afford.
I mean, I guess when you look at the logic of the question, this scenario in which you wouldn't get any points would be, I could potentially bring on more staff, but I just don't have my act together and just can't do it because, not because I don't have the money, but just because I'm not managing the facility well, you know? So yeah, I think we need to clarify this question a little more.
Yeah,
What we're
but I
really-
think it's on our criteria more so, or like on our scoring criteria.
Yeah.
Yeah, what a successful outcome is.
Mhm.
Because I love seeing how many staff and volunteers you guys have to be able to do the things that you do. Because I think that's one of the things that shows, I think definitely volunteers show that buy-in from the community.
Mhm.
And that,
They do.
and then of course, just, I think, all of our facilities, I'm sure, could use more staff in the pursuit.
Yeah.
Oh, yes,
Paid
all of them,
support.
even the,
Yeah.
even ones
Yeah.
that do, I mean,
Yeah.
Salem Art Association could use more too, they have
Right,
10
Well-
times as many as us, but they could use
yeah,
more too.
just
because
extended
it-
programming and stuff, yeah. I think they have a lot of part-time. people.
Yes,
That's
they
what it is.
do.
They have a lot of people, but it's a
Yeah.
lot of part-time.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, I think a
Yeah.
lot of that.
Yeah. I mean, like, I know the Elsinore has like 8 people.
Yeah, but not many full-time.
Yeah. I think we should have another meeting at another time, another date. When we're all fresh,
Yeah,
bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and ready to take on the next section.
How soon? How long? This time works pretty well for everyone. You want to have another in 2 weeks or 3 weeks or? relatively fresh.
Yeah,
Do we have a deadline of when we have to have this completed by?
I think
Like
you
if
said
it's
something like
June.
July.
Oh, I
June
thought
June
we
or
said
July?
for the June meeting, which would be second Tuesday in June.
I would prefer not to drag this out. We can get closer
Yeah.
together, or remember what we said. the last time.
Me too.
Yeah,
So is May 14th, which would
How about
probably be.
tomorrow?
So when I did the doodle poll, everyone but Alicia could also be here 3 to 5 on May 14th. And we are gonna cancel our TOT meeting that night and do an optional tour of Gilbert House and Salem Multicultural, like at 6 to 7 and 7:30 to 8:30. So if you met from 3 to 5, you wouldn't also be doing a TOT meeting. you
I
know, at
can't
6.
do that day now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we're
All
having
right, so
that.
I'll send out a new doodle poll.
Sorry.
yeah.
Was that the historical meeting that
Yes,
Alicia's going to?
Okay.
yes,
You guys are also going to?
yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay,
That was my question, I was like, well, if one's going, does that mean they're all going?
there you go. All right, I will send out a new doodle poll, from the 14th on for 2 weeks. Because this was the only one that worked for everyone out of the 14th.
And this is a Wednesday, so I could be on a Wednesday.
Yeah,
Wednesdays or two. What
I
days
kind
are
of appreciate after the 14th because I have a magazine that I've got.
okay, I will send that out.
Thank you.
you?
And I'm
It's not me.
sorry I wasn't here at the beginning in person. We have water, it came into the basement today, and they can't figure out why. And our offices are down there, and so I was literally running a water extractor in the basement until I ran out, so.
Yikes.
Thankfully, it's not in the office area yet, but it is a very important part of the basement, so.
Is it actually flowing then?
So I'm
It's
gonna
just
trickling
like
through the
close
stone,
this meeting.
and the
Yes.
floor
Okay.
was wet enough,
Thank
the
you.
carpet, that when you walked, it was like stepping in puddles. Yeah.
This water's nasty.